Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to Countable or Uncountable Nouns. My name is Charles. I am your host for today. I hope you are all doing well and you've had a good weekend and a great day today so far. I am going to be your host, so you're going to be seeing me for the next half hour. I hope everyone has had a good day, like I said, and I would quickly like to do a quick sound check for those of you who are here live. If you can hear me and you can see me clearly as well as the presentation, can you go ahead and say something in our chat? So if my voice and video is clear, can you go ahead, type something in the chat? That way I know I can hear you and that I can see you as well. Just go ahead, let me know. You can go ahead, type hi, hello, yes, I can hear you. Maybe even let me know how your day was today or what you did over the weekend. That way, of course, I can make sure that our connection is all right, because of course it will be a little difficult to go over our material today if our connection is not that great. However, I would also like to encourage you, if there are any connection errors, like for example right now or throughout our webinar, just let me know by saying something, and of course I will do my best to help you from my side. I see that we have a good connection. It looks like our connection is good today. That is awesome to see. Hello, everyone. I see we have a lot of people here. So whether you are here live or you're watching the recorded version of this, I would just like to greet you. As you know already, my name is Charles. And if we've met before, well, that's awesome. Glad to see you again. However, if this is our first time meeting, I would just like to take a couple minutes to introduce myself if you do not know me. As you know already, I'm Charles, as I've said. I'm from the Philippines, and I am one of the Tutlo tutors here on the platform and one of the webinar hosts as well. Beyond that, to get to know me a little bit better, here are a few fun facts about me personally. Number one, I like coffee. I like dogs. That's number two. And last, number three, I love sports. So if you have any of those in your personalities and what you enjoy, then we would get along perfectly. That's awesome. Over the next couple minutes, I would just like to go ahead and explain what we will do today. That way, you, of course, will be able to understand what our topic is about. Now, today's topic, talking about uncountable or a countable noun, is one of the most basic, but one of the most important things to know and to be able to learn when it comes to the English language. The reason behind that is because if you get this right, it builds a good foundation. It's sort of like a building. You have to start here, learn something as basic as your countable or uncountable nouns in order to correctly go to level 2, level 3, level 4. However, the thing is, if you do not correctly learn your countable or uncountable nouns, it will make it a lot harder to go to level 2, level 3, or even to do level 2 or level 3 correctly. So that's why with today, we want to first talk about how to recognize nouns. Again, this is very basic. So if you've had the opportunity to learn nouns already, that's great. If not, that's okay. We will make sure to be able to go ahead and explain that to you. And then we will go ahead and talk about those two sides, the countable and the uncountable nouns. We'll make sure we're able to explain it. And of course, we will make sure to know the differences between these things. When it comes to a countable or an uncountable noun, it might be a little hard, but it actually is quite basic when you recognize the rules, because like many other things in language or in life, there are rules to learn. And when you learn the rules to the differences with an uncountable and countable noun, it actually is quite easy to be able to recognize the difference. Before we get into anything else, here are just two quick reminders. As I said, before we start in the main topic of our webinar, topic number one that I would like to quickly remind you of is how long we will be here. Like I said earlier, we are going to be here for 30 minutes, which is around a half hour. We started at around 6:30, so we will finish at around 7. And beyond that, I encourage you to use our chat that is open today. You can make comments about what we learn, participate in activities that we have, or even go ahead and ask questions, as we will have time to go ahead and answer all your questions during our Q&A later on today. Let's go ahead, dive into it now as everything is explained, by first explaining what a noun is. So if we're going to talk about countable and uncountable nouns, we have to first understand what a noun is, right? The basics first, and we build. So what is a noun? Well, a noun is multiple things. A noun is a word that refers to, like I said, multiple things. So the first thing to understand is just a noun is a word. And a noun is simply a word that refers to a thing. Now, a thing could be like a computer, a smartphone, a water bottle, a plate, a car, a house, a tree, a bird, a dog, whatever it is. As long as it is a thing, it is a noun. Now, if we're learning that later, countable things and uncountable things. And of course, nouns also refer to people. People like Paul, or a person like, for example, we have here today Kasia or Ola or Joanna, whatever it is. Your names are all considered nouns. So if you use your name in a sentence, your name would be a person, so your name would function as a noun. And of course, another thing that could be referred to as a noun would be places. Places like the mall, the school, the cinema, the courthouse, or whatever it is. So if it is a thing, a person, a place, or maybe even an idea like bravery or a boldness or honesty, those are all considered to be nouns. So if we know that a noun can be something like a person, place, thing, or idea, how do we know the difference between countable and uncountable nouns? So if you have a notebook, I encourage you, maybe go ahead and write down what a noun is, and also go ahead and draw on one side countable, and then a big line in the middle, and uncountable. That way it's easy for you to study this later on. And of course, taking notes actually really helps us learn. So we'll go over first our countable nouns. And it is just like it sounds. A countable noun are simply people, animals, objects, places that can be counted. It's countable. So if you can say 5 of this, 10 of this, 2 of this, 1,000,000 of this, it is considered to be countable. Let's look at a couple things, like people, kids, right? Kids are considered to be people, right? There's like boys, girls, parents, men, women. You can count that. 5 kids, 10 parents, 2 brothers, 3 sisters, 5 aunts. Those are all considered to be people, and they're all considered to be countable because you can count these things, right? You can count how many kids. You can count how many parents. You can count how many brothers or sisters. Another thing that is an example, an animal. A countable animal would be like the cheetah. You can find 3 cheetahs, 5 elephants, 9 dogs, 2 cats. You can count it, right? Because I can say there's 9 of this, 10 of these animals. Another thing, objects, right? Countable nouns are objects that can be counted. You can count how many books you have, 500 books, for example. Or you can go ahead and count how many smartphones you have, 1 smartphone. Or you can count how many cars you have, 3 cars. Those are all objects. And also, like we said earlier, places. So if you can count these places, then they are considered to be countable nouns, like schools. I can count how many schools. Like, there are 5 schools in my city. There are 2 universities in my country. There are 5 malls in my province. Whatever it is, it's quite simple again, as long as you can count it, right? I can count these people. I can count these animals, these objects or places. So this is probably the more simple side of the discussion. Where it gets a little bit harder is with the uncountable nouns. So if you have a notebook, on this side, you have your countable nouns. Now let's go to this side of your notebook and talk about the uncountable nouns. And just like you said earlier with countable nouns, simple, you can count it because it's countable. So if something is uncountable, it simply means that it is something you cannot count. So any noun that you cannot count is an uncountable noun. And I know that sounds crazy. How can I not count these things, right? How can there not be any amount of these things? Well, it is like this. Yes, these uncountable nouns are still people, places, things, ideas, or whatever, but you cannot count it. Now, how is that possible? Well, let's look at a couple examples of words that cannot be counted. Look at the word milk. We know milk is an object. We get it from cows and we drink it. But can we count milk? Can I say 2 milks, 3 milks, 1 milk? No, we cannot. That's not right. What we can count are the glasses of milk. We can say, I want 3 glasses of milk. I want 5 glasses of milk. Or I want 1 glass of milk. But what I am counting is the glasses. I cannot count the milk. I can only count the glasses of the milk. So, for example, that's one thing we cannot count. We cannot count milk. But another word we cannot count is money. Now, how can I not count money? I know I have $500. Well, that's the difference. You cannot count money itself because money is uncountable. Because I cannot say I have 5 monies, 10 monies, or 30 monies. That is wrong. What I have to know is what kind of money is it? I can count, for example, the dollars. I can say $5, $100, or where you live, for example, with the euro or the zloty. You can go ahead and say 5 of those, 5 euros, 2 euros, or in the Philippines, we have the peso. I can say 100 pesos, 50 pesos, but I cannot count money. While money is a thing, right? Money is an object. I cannot count money itself. I can count the kind of money, but not money. What else can I not count? Well, food. Now, how can I not count food? Well, if you look at the word food, you cannot say 3 foods, 5 foods, or 10 foods, even 1 food. That is not right. It's almost the same thing like money. You can only count the kind of it. For example, with a cookie. I can count a cookie, right? 1 cookie, 2 cookies, 4 cookies, 10 cookies. I can count how many cookies I have, but I cannot count the food that I have. I can count how many eggs I have. I can count how how many brownies I have, how many pancakes I have, how many, let's say, even slices of bacon that I have. But I cannot count food itself. I can only count the kinds of food for the most part, like cookies, bananas, apples, but I cannot count the word food. So that's where you have to learn. Most of the time, when it comes to uncountable nouns, it refers to these big things that are so huge. Like, for example, water. I cannot count water, just like I cannot count milk. But I can count the oceans. I can count the glasses of milk. I can also not count food, but I can count the cookies. I cannot count sand. I can count the grains of sand. So you can think, if anything is so huge, it might not be a countable noun. You can count the kinds of it, though. That's where your countable nouns come in. And actually, there is a hint. If you're trying to learn if a noun is countable or uncountable, there's one thing you can do that can help. And that is try to make it plural. Plural simply means more than one, right? The word form that is more than just one. And sometimes it works. For example, book. Can I make it plural? Yes, I can say books. So books is countable because I can say one book, that's countable. And I can also say 5 books, that works. Now, what about shirt? Yes, I can say 2 shirts or 1 shirt, maybe 5 shirts, whatever it is. I can count it, right? With adding that S, it makes it plural, right? Now, maybe something like food that we talked about earlier. Can I count food? 1 food, maybe. But is foods a word? No, foods is not a word. It just stays as food, right? I can count the kinds of food again, like bananas, apples, but I cannot count the word food. Also, maybe another thing like water. Like I mentioned earlier, you cannot count water. Can I say 1 water, 4 waters? No, that's not right. I have to say bottles of water, glasses of water, or the lakes even. So that's considered to be a body of water. But the word water itself is not countable. So that's basically the idea of understanding, okay, how do these words work? If it's countable or if it's uncountable. But there are a few weird things that we have to learn and have to remember when we talk about this topic. That is the idea of words that you do not just add an S to. If you look at these 2 examples of making it plural, with book becomes books, shirt becomes shirts. However, there are some words that are a little bit more complicated. That would be, for example, the word like tooth. It doesn't become tooths, it becomes teeth, but it's still countable because I can say 1 tooth or 5 teeth. Yes, there's no S, but it's still countable because it just changes differently. Or like woman, I'm not going to say 5 womans, I'm going to say 5 women, but I can still count how many women there are. Or another word like mouse, I can count it still. I can still say 10 mice, not mouses. Or the last one, child. I'm not going to say 4 childs. I'm going to say 4 children. But I can still count how many children there are. Because remember, countable nouns are people, but you can count. So I hope that explains the idea of what we've discussed with talking about things that are either countable or uncountable. But I want to see if you are able to know the difference with a countable noun or a uncountable noun. So up on your screen, there is going to be a sentence. In this sentence, you have to tell me if this underlined noun is countable or if it is uncountable. Here's your first one. It says, We saw many seagulls at the beach. And the underlined word here is seagulls. Now, can we count the word seagulls? Is that a countable noun? Or is that uncountable? There are many other nouns here. For example, we is a noun. Beach is also a noun. Those are both countable, right? We're talking about the people. But seagulls. Is seagulls a countable or uncountable noun? Let me know in the chat. What do you think the proper answer is? Is it A, countable, or is it B, uncountable? Let me know. Let's see if you're able to recognize this. It's just a fun activity to challenge your skills as well to see if you were able to learn what we have been talking about, because I know I've been doing most of the talking. So is this an example of something that I can count or something I cannot count? The answer is yes, letter A. It is countable. Why? Well, seagulls, as a kind of bird, I can say 5 seagulls, and it's kind of given away here by the word many. If you look at the word many, it says that there's a lot of this, so it means I can probably count it. Let's try one more. Here is number 2. We ran out of cold water bottles. Is this countable or is this uncountable? So from what we've learned, can you let me know? Can we say that the underlined word here is countable, which is letter A, or is it letter B? And this is something that I cannot count. What do you all think? Yes or no? Is this a countable or an uncountable noun? Based off everything we've talked about today, can I count this word or not? Let me know. Take your time. And I see some answers already. If you went with letter B, uncountable, that is correct. Why is that correct? Because we cannot count water itself. Water is not countable. But remember, I can count bottles. I can count 10 bottles, 15 bottles. But I cannot count water because water itself is an uncountable noun. It's just like milk, right? If I say we ran out of cold milk bottles, it means that I can count the bottles of milk, but not the milk itself. Just like I can count the water bottles, but not the water itself. So just remember that. Small difference, but it has a big effect. Let me give you all a couple reminders. Number 1, remember how to recognize what a noun is. A noun would be a person, place, thing, or idea, like Paula, book, cinema. Those are all nouns. And let me go ahead and tell me how something cannot be counted. It sounds crazy, but like we learned, it's true. Words like water, words like sand or milk, money cannot be counted. And remember, of course, the small hint. If you're trying to discover if it's a countable or an uncountable noun, do the basic. Just add the letter S. Try to make it plural. If it can become plural, then chances are it's probably countable. Like you can say 5 seagulls. But if you cannot make it plural, maybe it's not countable. We're going to transition now to the last portion of today's webinar, where we're just going to make sure if you understood what we have discussed today. So based off what we learned, if there's anything you would like to ask, go ahead and ask it now in the chat. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and let me know what those questions are. Maybe something was confusing for you, or you want me to just explain something a little more. Or if you just have any questions, go ahead and ask it in the chat, and I would love to give you as good of an answer as I can. If you do not have any questions, that's okay. I just like to hear back what you thought of today's webinar. There is a poll up on your screen that just asks if you found today's lesson useful. Did you learn something? Did you benefit from it? At the end of the day, that's the goal. So if we did help you, mission accomplished. We still have maybe 1 more minute for any questions if anyone has it. If not, there's one last poll for us to go over. It's just asking if you would like to join us again for another webinar in the future. If so, check us out. We do them from Monday to Friday, and we have a lot of different topics that you'd like to join. Now, somebody asked a question in the chat, and you're going ahead and saying, is the word hair countable? So you have to understand, what can we go ahead and do here? What's our checklist? Can I go ahead and say that? Hair, can I change that plural? Can it become hairs? No, that doesn't sound right, right? So maybe not. So then, is there another word that we can think of when we're trying to count the hairs? And that's yes. So the word hair itself is normally uncountable. The correct thing that you can count is the strands of hair. So I sent it in the chat. I can go ahead and count the strands of hair. 5 strands, 10 strands, 20 strands. But the word hair itself, I cannot count. So I hope that explained what your question was. And of course, if you have any other questions, just go ahead and let me know. But I hope that I was able to explain it for you. And maybe we have time for one more question if anyone has a question that they'd like to ask. And if not, we'll go ahead and we will wrap up. So I don't see any more questions, and I hope that I answered your question, Magda. And that is going to be all from me, as my time is about up today. But before that, quick reminder, Tutlo is present on social media. You can check us out on places like Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and a couple other places. We post content on there to, of course, keep everyone up to date and post some learning tips and videos for all of you. That's going to be all from me. Thank you for joining us today. I hope to see you again soon. Maybe I will get that chance in another webinar or even a lesson on the platform. Until next time, everyone, have a great rest of your day, and goodbye for now.